Today is May 31st. The time is 3:30. We are gathered here in the Sheriff's Conference Room for the purpose of a pre-disciplinary hearing in reference to Correctional Officer Ronnie Wyatt. Present is Officer Wyatt, Investigator Norton, Sergeant Harrison, and myself. Just for the record, we'll start with you, Mr. Wyatt. If you would state your full name and your employee number.
Ronnie Wyatt, 20325.
Alvin Spencer Norton, 22222.
Dwayne Harrison, employee number 16060.
I'm Joseph Sean Sutherland, employee number 8471. I'm the Assistant Chief Deputy. I'll be sitting as the hearing officer in this case. Just to give you a heads up on the way these works, Ms. White, is I will let the investigators present the case as it was investigated and as it was presented to the sheriff. I'll let them present their stuff fully. When they're done, I'll open up the floor to you to give any testimony, any evidence on your behalf in reference to this case. Once all things have been put into evidence, we will recess. I'll review the facts of the case, and then I'll come to a disciplinary finding. It has been revealed to your immediate supervisor you may have violated the following Clayton County Sheriff's Office rules, regulations, and or Clayton County Civil Service rules. 7.02, truthfulness. 7.06, conduct unbecoming. And 5.05, use of force reporting. Waiving this hearing was not an option, so if you would, just right there where it says, I do not wish to waive the hearing. If you'll initial that and then sign where it says employee. If everybody raises their right hand, I'll give you a brief oath. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Officer White.
I do.
Yes or no?
I do.
Sergeant Harrison?
I do.
All right, thanks so much. Investigator Norton, if you will, go ahead and present the case.
Yes, sir. On April 16, 2012, inmate Michael Jamal Ford, lead number 0970583, advised Lieutenant W. Smith. Several correctional officers used excessive force on him on April 13, 2012. Lieutenant Board completed an investigation into this incident. The investigation was reassigned to Special Investigations Section for review. On April 13, 2012, Correctional Officer St. Louis, Correctional Officer Fincher attempted to lock down inmate Michael Ford for failure to comply with officer's orders. Inmate Ford refused to lock down. Correctional Officer St. Louis, Correctional Officer Fincher escorted inmate Ford to the ground. Correctional Officer Feemster administered one knee strike to inmate Ford's right shoulder. Correctional Officer St. Louis administered several knee strikes and elbow strikes to the back and neck area of inmate Ford. Correctional Officer Feemster notified other officers via the radio he needed assistance with a non-compliant inmate. Correctional Officer Wyatt arrived and inmate Ford was handcuffed. Jail miscellaneous incident report by Correctional Officer Wyatt. Correctional Officer White completed a jail miscellaneous incident report on April 13, 2012. Correctional Officer White stated he responded to Section 6 due to a fight involving officers. Correctional Officer White stated he observed inmate Ford laying on his right side, physically resisting Correctional Officer St. Louis and Fincher. Correctional Officer White assisted with securing inmate Ford into handcuffs. A copy of this incident report is attached to this case file for review. Written statement to Lieutenant Bower from Correctional Officer White. Correctional Officer White submitted a written statement to Lieutenant Bower on April 18, 2012. Correctional Officer White's written statement was not consistent with the jail miscellaneous report he submitted on April 13, 2012. Correctional Officer White stated he observed inmate Ford lying on the floor, physically resisting Correctional Officer St. Louis and Fincher. Correctional Officer White stated inmate Ford's head was towards the bunk in the cell. Correctional Officer White stated he entered the cell and inmate Ford shifted his body, causing his right arm to go between his chest and the floor. Correctional Officer White stated he assisted Correctional Officer Fincher with securing inmate Ford's left arm. Correctional Officer St. Louis delivered 3 elbow strikes to inmate Ford's upper back and neck area, while Correctional Officer White secured inmate Ford's left wrist into handcuffs. Correctional Officer Fincher secured inmate Ford's right wrist into handcuffs. Correctional Officer White stated he left the section while Correctional Officer St. Louis and Fincher assisted inmate Ford to his feet. Correctional Officer White stated Correctional Officer St. Louis escorted inmate Ford from the cell to the catwalk. Inmate Ford began to shout at Correctional Officer St. Louis. Correctional Officer White stated Correctional Officer St. Louis gave inmate Ford verbal commands to get on his knees. Correctional Officer White stated inmate Ford complied, and Correctional Officer St. Louis then escorted inmate Ford to the floor where they waited for a supervisor. Video from Housing Unit 2. Lieutenant Bohr obtained video footage from Housing Unit 6 from Lieutenant Pauls. The video shows Correctional Officer Finkster escorting inmate Ford from the section into the catwalk. Inmate Ford turned to say something to Correctional Officer St. Louis. Correctional Officer St. Louis then takes control of inmate Ford and slams him to the ground. A copy of this video is attached to this case file for review. On April 26, 2012, Investigator Waits and I conducted an interview with Correctional Officer Wyatt. I asked Correctional Officer Wyatt to explain to me in detail the events which took place on April 13, 2012 between himself and inmate Ford. Correctional Officer Wyatt's statements were not consistent with the statement he submitted to Lieutenant Bohr. Correctional Officer Wyatt stated Correctional Officer St. Louis escorted inmate Ford from the section. Correctional Officer Wyatt stated as they got to the catwalk area, Correctional Officer St. Louis let go of inmate Ford. Inmate Ford was pacing back and forth in the catwalk area while waiting on supervisors to arrive. I instructed Correctional Officer Wyatt this was not consistent with the statement he submitted to Lieutenant Bohr. Investigator Waits then instructed Correctional Officer Wyatt to explain the events again using more details. Correctional Officer Wyatt stated Correctional Officer St. Louis escorted inmate Ford to the catwalk. Correctional Officer Wyatt stated once Correctional Officer St. Louis and inmate Ford got to the door, Correctional Officer St. Louis took his hand off of inmate Ford. Inmate Ford began to yell. He wanted a warrant taken out on all officers involved in this incident. Correctional Officer Wyatt stated at this time Correctional Officer St. Louis told inmate Ford to get on one knee. Correctional Officer Wyatt stated inmate Ford complied with Correctional Officer St. Louis' order. Correctional Officer Wyatt stated Correctional Officer St. Louis then instructed inmate Ford to go down on the other knee, and inmate Ford complied. Correctional Officer Wyatt stated Correctional Officer St. Louis then assisted inmate Ford to his stomach without using any force. I then asked Correctional Officer Wyatt if his statements he submitted to Lieutenant Bohr were accurate and truthful. Correctional Officer Wyatt stated yes. I asked Correctional Officer Wyatt if he needed to add, subtract anything from his statement. He stated no. I then instructed Correctional Officer Wyatt to sign his statement if it was indeed accurate. Correctional Officer Wyatt signed his statement. I witnessed the statement by signing it. I then informed Correctional Officer Wyatt I had obtained video of the incident and I allowed him to view the video. I asked Correctional Officer Wyatt to explain to me what he saw in the video. Correctional Officer Wyatt said he observed Correctional Officer St. Louis put inmate Ford on the ground. Correctional Officer Wyatt continued to say Correctional Officer St. Louis gave inmate Ford verbal commands to get on his knees. Correctional Officer Wyatt then admitted inmate Ford was making statements towards the officers while being escorted from the section. Correctional Officer Wyatt stated Correctional Officer St. Louis lost his temper and took inmate Ford to the ground. Correctional Officer Wyatt stated he felt like he was helping Correctional Officer St. Louis as a friend by being untruthful in the statements he made to Lieutenant Bohr. I then instructed Correctional Officer Wyatt to complete a new statement. A copy of this interview and written statement is attached to this case file for review. Violation 9. During the course of this investigation, Correctional Officer R. Wyatt did willfully depart from the truth on several occasions. Correctional Officer Wyatt submitted a jail miscellaneous report which he willfully omitted several facts concerning the events which took place between himself, Correctional Officer St. Louis, Correctional Officer Finkster, and inmate Ford on April 13, 2012. Correctional Officer Wyatt submitted a written statement to Lieutenant Bohr on April 17, 2012 in which he stated Correctional Officer St. Louis gave inmate Ford verbal commands to get on his knees. Inmate Ford complied and no force was used. Correctional Officer Wyatt made these statements to me during an internal affairs investigative interview. The video obtained of the incident clearly shows inmate Ford was forced to the ground by Correctional Officer St. Louis and inmate Ford did not go to his knees. Therefore, it is sustained Correctional Officer Wyatt did violate Clayton County Sheriff's Office Rules and Regulations 07.02 truthfulness. The personnel of the Sheriff's Office shall be truthful at all times, both on and off duty, under oath or otherwise. Anyone who does willfully depart from the truth shall be considered unfit for service and subject to disciplinary action. Violation 10. Correctional Officer Wyatt assisted Correctional Officer St. Louis and Correctional Officer Finkster with dealing with inmate Ford on April 13, 2012. Correctional Officer Wyatt submitted a jail miscellaneous incident report which did not contain all the facts pertaining to the incident. Correctional Officer Wyatt failed to mention inmate Ford was forced to the ground without provocation by Correctional Officer St. Louis. Therefore, it is sustained Correctional Officer Wyatt did violate Clayton County Sheriff's Office Rules and Regulations 07.06, prohibition against conduct unbecoming an officer. Correctional Officer Wyatt assisted Correctional Officer St. Louis, Correctional Officer Finkster with dealing with inmate Ford on April 13, 2012. Correctional Officer Wyatt submitted a jail miscellaneous incident report which did not contain all the facts pertaining to the incident. Correctional Officer Wyatt failed to mention inmate Ford was forced to the ground without provocation by Correctional Officer St. Louis. Therefore, it is sustained. Correction Officer Wyatt did violate Clayton County Sheriff's Office Rules and Regulations 05.05 use of force reporting. This case is closed as sustained.
Officer Wyatt, the floor is yours.
About that situation, I won't say I felt obligated, but you know, I did deviate from the truth, and I didn't want to throw anybody under the bus. Honestly, I don't know if it was I didn't want to get anybody's bad graces or what. I probably didn't realize the severity of the situation when it happened. But seeing as all I've just come out of it, whatever it is that happens, I'm ready on up to it.
Time is now about 20 to 4. I want to take about a 15-minute recess so I can review the case some. I'll come to a finding during that time. You know, Officer Wyatt, it's kind of one of those things that, you know, I understand how it's easy to get caught up in, you know, use of force things. I've been doing this job for a minute. The problem is you know, we can't overlook what happened, and we can't overlook the fact that you willfully, you know, lied to investigators and you willfully lied in a report. You know, so I'm going to have to sustain the 7.02 truthfulness, the 7.06 conduct unbecoming, and the 5.05 use of force reporting, and I will have to move forward with the recommended discipline, which was termination. Okay. With that, I will close this hearing, and I will release investigators. Ms. White, I'll have to have you stand by with me for a little bit so we can finish some paperwork.
Okay.
All right. I close the hearing.